You know that feeling you get when you're watching a movie and you think, wait a minute, I've seen that character before, or that logo, or that weird little town, but in a totally different film? Well, guess what? You're probably not imagining it. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on this secret world to show you all the hidden connections, the deliberate crossovers, and even some wild fan theories that tie your favorite movies together in ways you never, ever expected.
So to kick things off, let's just dive right into a perfect example that shows you just how strange and wonderful these connections can get. We're talking about two movies from totally different decades with completely different vibes, but they share one unforgettable crossover.
All right, so on one side, you've got Casper, that sweet, heartwarming family movie from 1995 about a ghost who just wants a friend. And on the other, the absolute comedy classic from 1984, Ghostbusters. I mean, you would never think these two belong in the same reality, right? But it turns out they do, all thanks to one brilliant cameo.
And here's where it gets so cool. When the new owner of the mansion needs some paranormal exterminators, who does she call? Well, she calls in the actual Ghostbusters, or at least one of them. Dr. Ray Stantz himself, played by Dan Aykroyd, shows up, proton pack and everything. After getting completely spooked, he bolts out the door and drops that amazing line. Now, this isn't just a fun little nod. This is basically confirmation that the Ghostbusters are a real, for-hire business in the world of cat.
Okay, so that cameo was a fantastic one-off, but sometimes these connections are way more intentional. They're woven right into the DNA of a director's work. And that brings us to our first category. Filmmakers who basically treat their movies like they're all one big story.
And you really can't talk about this without talking about the undisputed king of 80s teen movies, John Hughes. See, instead of just setting his films in some random suburb, he invented his own fictional town, Shermer, Illinois, and used it as his personal playground for all of his most iconic characters.
And just like that, Hughes built this entire world that felt real and lived in. The school and the breakfast club? That's Shermer High. Where's Ferris Bueller playing hooky? Right there in the Shermer area. All these legendary characters, from Samantha Baker to Bender, are all walking the same streets. It just makes the world feel so much richer, you know? It suggests that their lives could have easily intersected when the cameras weren't rolling.
And the best part is, this wasn't just some fan theory that got out of hand. Hughes himself confirmed it. He literally said he pictured a world where Ferris Bueller knew Samantha Baker. It was his own personal cinematic universe, way, way before Marvel made it a global phenomenon.
All right, now let's talk about another pair of famous collaborators who absolutely love to play in their own shared sandbox, Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. Their movies are definitely their own thing, but if you look closely, you'll find all these little threads that tie their violent, hilarious worlds together.
Okay, this one is so subtle, but so awesome. Tarantino wrote and starred as the totally unhinged Richie Gecko in Rodriguez's vampire masterpiece, From Dusk Till Dawn. A year later, he produced this little indie film called Curdled. Now, in one scene, the main character is watching a news report, and it's about the Gecko brothers' crime spree. And who's the newscaster? It's Kelly Preston, playing the exact same reporter she played in From Dusk Till Dawn. It's a tiny little detail, but it confirms these two very different crime stories exist in the same universe.
So sometimes the link isn't a whole town or a director's signature, but just a single character who actually makes the leap from one movie to a completely different one. And a lot of the time, the consequences are pretty grim.
This might be one of the most bizarre pairings on the entire list. I mean, what on earth could giant alien robots possibly have to do with the slasher icon Jason Voorhees? Well, the answer is one character. A classic jerk of a jock named Trent, who had a really, really bad couple of years.
Okay, here's how it all breaks down. In the 2007 Transformers movie, directed by Michael Bay, this actor, Travis Van Winkle, plays Trent, the arrogant boyfriend who gets dumped by Megan Fox's character. Okay, 2 years later, in the remake of Friday the 13th, which was produced by, you guessed it, Michael Bay, Van Winkle shows up again as a character, also named Trent, who's the exact same kind of arrogant jerk. Well, this Trent meets a very, very painful end thanks to Jason Voorhees. The implication is undeniable, it's the same guy. After getting dumped, he took a little trip to Crystal Lake and, well, it did not end well for him.
Now for a much more famous and way less bloody example of a character crossover. This one comes from two of Eddie Murphy's all-time greatest comedies. The link here is a classic riches to rags story, showing us exactly what happened to a pair of villains after the credits rolled.
So at the end of Trading Places, the greedy billionaire Duke brothers, Randolph and Mortimer, lose everything. They are completely wiped out. Flash forward 5 years to Coming to America. Prince Akeem gives a massive wad of cash to two homeless men on a park bench. And who are they? It's Randolph and Mortimer Duke, played by the very same actors. Mortimer's joyful declaration, "We're back," just seals the deal. It confirms their story kept right on going in a whole new movie.
But what if the connection isn't a person at all? What if it's a place, a country, or even a company that keeps popping up across different movies? That's what we're going to dig into next, how these fictional places create a shared background for totally unrelated stories.
A perfect example of this is the Republic of Valverde. You might not know the name, but if you're a fan of 80s action movies, you have definitely been there. Screenwriter Stephen E. D'Souza basically invented this fictional Latin American country as an all-purpose danger zone. In Commando, it's where Arnold Schwarzenegger is supposed to go on a mission. In Die Hard 2, the main villain is a dictator from Valverde. And, wildest of all, Valverde is also the jungle where the original Predator takes place, which adds this whole sci-fi horror layer to this one fictional nation.
Weyland-Yutani. For sci-fi fans, that name is a big deal. It's the evil megacorp from the Alien franchise. So you can imagine the surprise when, in the prequel, Death Race 2, we find out that the whole deadly prison race is owned and funded by the Weyland Corporation. The common thread here is director Paul W.S. Anderson. He directed Alien vs. Predator, and he also worked on the Death Race story, neatly connecting these two brutal dystopian futures.
All right, so far we've pretty much stuck to connections that are confirmed or at least heavily implied. But now we get to step into the wild and wonderful world of fan theories. These are ideas so good, so compelling, that they create connections the filmmakers might never have intended. Or did they?
Let's start with a really big one from the world of Disney animation. Fans with some seriously sharp eyes have pieced together a theory that links Frozen and Tangled in a way that is actually pretty tragic.
Okay, so here's how the theory goes. We all know that Anna and Elsa's parents died in a shipwreck. We also know that 3 years later, during Elsa's big coronation, you can clearly spot Rapunzel and Flynn Rider from Tangled in the crowd. Well, the timeline fits perfectly. The theory is that the king and queen of Arendelle were sailing to Corona to attend Rapunzel's wedding when their ship went down. And that would explain why Rapunzel and Flynn felt this royal duty to come to the coronation of the newly orphaned queen a few years later. It's a heartbreaking but brilliant connection.
Now for a theory that's a little more unsettling. It connects two incredibly mind-bending psychological thrillers from two different decades. On the surface, they seem totally different, but their core ideas are eerily similar.
What's so fascinating is that this whole theory hinges on one actress, Catherine Keener. In Being John Malkovich, she plays Maxine, who figures out how to inhabit John Malkovich's mind. Then, in Get Out, she plays Missy Armitage, the matriarch of a family that, transfers people's minds into other bodies. The theory is that Missy is actually just Maxine, living under a new name, having spent the last 20 years perfecting her consciousness-swapping technology. And the best part? The director of Get Out, Jordan Peele, actually told this theory to Spike Jonze, the director of Malkovich, who apparently just chuckled. That's about as close to a confirmation as a fan theory's ever gonna get.
So as we've seen, these cinematic universes are built in all kinds of ways, right? It could be a director like John Hughes building his own little world, or a character like Trent DeMarco meeting a terrible end in another movie, or even just a corporate logo that pops up where you'd least expect it. Or hey, maybe it's just a fan theory that's so good it just has to be true. The connections really are everywhere if you know what to look for.
The big takeaway here is that movies are rarely just isolated stories. They're all part of this huge, often invisible web of connections. So the next time you sit down to watch something, keep your eyes peeled for those little details, a familiar name, a place, a face in the crowd. You might just be the one to discover the next great shared cinematic universe. Thanks for watching.